Hello, my name is Lachlan, and I'm the host and creator of Mindclickers. I am a sport and exercise science student with a passion for esports, athlete well-being, and performance. I got into esports quite a long time ago in high school, where I competed in a couple of online tournaments through Cybergamer, achieved high masters in StarCraft, and have been a motivated Counter-Strike player ever since. Mindclickers is a show where I chat with professional esports athletes in an array of games from League of Legends, Counter-Strike, Valorant, and StarCraft. In the following episode, I talk with Jack Wryce Birmingham, who is an elite PC gamer, currently a free agent after coming off the Dire Wolves Valorant roster. He has performed sensationally in previous roles in Paladins, representing some of the best teams in Australia. Listen to Jack provide an insight into his times playing Paladins and Valorant, and how he used his Paladin skills to translate into a competitive Valorant scene. Listen to Jack also talk about his ability to control his anxiety and outperform each and every opponent in the most ridiculous clutch situations. Finally, at the end, we'll include some smaller Valorant-specific game scenarios. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy. Alrighty, welcome back to episode 4 of Mindclickers, where it's time to click both heads in 2020. I'm joined here today by Jack Wryce Birmingham, who has recently entered into free agency after splitting up from the Dire Wolves Valorant team. How are you going today, mate?
I'm going very well. Thank you very, very much for having me on Mindclickers.
Brilliant, mate. I guess we'll start off with a bit of a background about yourself and how you made that transition from casual to competitive gameplay.
Yeah, well, I started playing like first-person shooters when I was around like 8 or 9 years old in primary school. My dad bought me an Xbox, and first game I got was Halo 3, which is the best first game to get. And so straight off the bat, I was just addicted to like just the whole like FPS competitive aspect of the game. And yeah, so I continued to play those kind of games like ridiculous hours every day throughout my whole childhood. And then I moved house, Xbox broke, and so I decided to get a PC. And that's where I discovered Counter-Strike. And that was sort of my first my first game into like the whole real competitive like side of things, trying to like grind ranks and like be the best. Played Counter-Strike for a bit, and then Paladins came out, and my friends introduced me to it, and I was like, oh, I don't want to play this game. It just looks like a bootleg Overwatch. Which, I mean, you hear that all the time. And so I got into that, and then within a month, I was on like a top 4 team, and it all just sort of shot up from there. I've always been like a very competitive person, so I just slipped into it like sweet as. And yeah, within a month, I was on a top 4 team, and then within like 3 months, I was in a top 2 team, and that's just where it all shot up from there. And then I joined Avant Gaming in like early 2017.
Yeah, brilliant. That sounds the same with me. Growing up playing Halo 3 on Xbox, running customs 4v4 on Sand Dune, Max Snipers, whatever it be. So that's definitely awesome to hear that. So in regards to Paladins, let's kick it off there. So was that the kind of game that you thought would stay around for a while? Or was it that sort of game that was like, it's a bit of on the side kind of competition?
I honestly believe that it would have been it's like a top 5 esports like with viewership and like player base. But the devs like they did not do justice to that game, and they would ignore the community, and it ended badly. So the game only lasted like 2 years, I think, as like a top esport, which is really upsetting. So I ended up leaving and sort of floating around for a bit. The last roster I played on for Paladins was Mind Freak, which was like 2019. And so I was just sort of hovering around. Paladins died. I was still on Mind Freak, did some content creation stuff, and I actually played Krunker for a bit, which is a very competitive game.
Right.
Yeah, it was really surprising because it's like an IO game, but they run like these crazy weekly tournaments with like $1,000 prize pool.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Like the viewership of it is insane. It gets like 1,000 concurrent viewers. And so I was playing that for a bit after Paladins, and then Valorant came out. And so, yeah, that's where I am now.
Yeah, right. And in regards to Paladins, obviously it has that direct rivalry with Overwatch. Did you always have in the back of your mind that, Overwatch is always going to be the reigning titan in this kind of genre of games?
Yeah, definitely. Like it was a hard decision for me because I did play a bit of Overwatch. It was a hard decision for me to want to stay in Paladins, but the real
Hmm.
deciding factor was Paladins was just like a more fun game for me. Like just at its core, like if I wasn't a pro player at that time, I would have just preferred to play Paladins because it was just more fun. Um, yeah, so I mean that's really all it was. But no, it was frustrating as well. Like the whole everyone would sort of make fun of you if you said you were a Paladins player. They're like, "Oh, why don't you just play Overwatch?" It's like get asked this every day. But yeah, it was frustrating.
Yep. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I definitely have a couple of friends who are Overwatch elitists and really wouldn't have a bar of it when I, brought up how about a game of Paladins, and that was just completely neglected. So, obviously making this transition into Valorant, do you think that dynamic, fast-paced aiming ability in Paladins has helped you to, transition into Valorant?
100%, yeah. There's definitely an advantage to have like aim transfer from other games into Valorant.
Mhm.
Um, but I will say, I mean, I'll get argued with this a lot because there are a lot of players who don't agree with me. But I don't,
Yep.
I don't think in Valorant it's a game that you necessarily have to have like god aim at. Like I don't really spend any
Hmm.
time in aim trainers or anything like that.
Okay. Yep.
Um, so I think what it all comes down, or like 90% of it comes down to, is like crosshair placement and movement into the crosshair placement, and then
Hmm.
generally from that, that'll translate to easy picks and stuff like that. But there is a aspect of raw aim mechanics that does have like a huge benefit to it. Yeah.
That's really interesting. We'll talk about aiming soon. In regards to, when Valorant came out, it had to essentially stand the test of time against the big titan CS:GO. But I think Valorant's niche was that it incorporated, abilities into this 5v5 dynamic plant the bomb team-based game. So do you think that, this external, I guess, add-on of having abilities in a 5v5 shooter has made an impact into this game scene?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. It it sort of brought the whole Overwatch Paladins world and the CS:GO world like together, basically,
Hmm.
which is very interesting for me, and actually very beneficial as well because all the Counter Strike players had this huge like mechanical advantage. Like they knew all the trading, how like angles work and stuff
Hmm.
like that. But
Yep.
all the guys who came from like Overwatch and Paladins, all the like ability usage was just like exponentially better compared to the CS:GO players. So
Yep.
there were like two different advantages to work with, and it was pretty cool actually to see like the whole competitive scene form around that.
Yeah, I really think that's super interesting. Those two mechanical worlds colliding. Essentially, you have CS:GO, the titan of essentially 5v5 gameplay, where it's solely focused on gun gameplay. Being able to aim efficiently, being able to, essentially all the focus is around the guns. And when you have an external I guess, add-ons such as abilities in a Valorant scene, it enhances the gameplay because there's so many more possibilities of, whether it's rotating or planning or, doing whatever, trying to make a play. Essentially, there's an added factor against that. Now, obviously, Valorant's powered by, Riot Games, the big powerhouse of the industry. If Valorant was produced by a smaller indie game company, do you think that they would still be as popular and it still would be as successful as it is today?
No, absolutely not. No, I don't think so. The game itself, like if it was released the way it is now by like a smaller games company, I don't think it would have the success that it has now. Um, I mean, it's just in such an early stage still. Like there's so much stuff they need to like do to refine the game. Uh,
Hmm.
it does, at times still feel kind of broken. And yeah, it's like it's not a game that I would choose to play if Riot wasn't behind it, basically. At least at this point. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think that, when we go into a game, when we go on Steam or whatever it may be, there's always that preconceived idea of what developers behind it. And we always look at the reviews, for example, and we look at a game, and if it's, negatively rated, what's the chance of us downloading that? That's majorly impacted. And I think that you have the big powerhouse titans and publishers such as Blizzard who release games, or Riot, or whoever it may be, and you understand that there's a lot more development behind them, and there's a lot more opportunity for, I guess, growth and updates and all that to be more frequent. And that kind of impacts how much effort we put into, I guess, playing a game, if it's going to be competitive or not.
Oh, it's definitely true. Yeah.
So, in regards to Valorant and your role in a game, tell us more about the types of champions you like to play and why.
So at the moment, at a pro level, I play like the Sentinel characters, so like Cypher. Well, actually, pretty much only Cypher, because if you're a Cypher player, you don't really have a big champ pool. And so what that basically means is my role is to lock down on defense. My role is to lock down a site and basically do my best to make sure the team can't push in, like use my abilities and stuff. And then also I've got a camera, and so I use that to get early info like down the map, so we can get map control and figure out like where they are and where they're trying to go. And I mean, I really enjoy that role because I like being able to think outside the box when playing in games like this, and that allows me to like do some really cool stuff and like play around my abilities more than other characters would. So I have a lot of fun playing that.
For sure. And do you think that with Cypher specifically, he has this kind of impact in the way that you can place your camera on a site and then you can rotate off the site, but you still have vision of it. So it allows that, I guess, more freedom to move around and roam.
100%, yeah. Hey, you've done your research.
I think I got to Plat 1.
Oh, yeah.
But that's when we got hard stuck in Plat, and it's just like, yeah.
Yeah, that'll happen. Actually, Plat's rough. There are some very sharp players in Plat, I will say.
Yeah, it was a little bit rough. I think because we all came from that CSGO background, we had that aiming ability. But for myself personally, just entering in, having to use like, different abilities and when to purchase them and when to save, or, that external element, it was a little bit tricky to get a grasp of it at first. You watch videos and do all that kind of stuff, but I guess that having that background in another game like Paladins, biggest, I can understand the mechanical advantage. So in regards to AWPers and snipers in general, each team has that kind of main sniper that they rely on. Are you that kind of sniper? I've seen a couple of shots of you popping off a bit. Is there someone else who takes that role in your team?
So sometimes we'll occasionally pull out the AWP on the Cypher if we have like a inflated economy from just like winning multiple rounds in a row. But generally you have the AWP on the Jet because of like her mobility, like the dash and stuff like that. She can jump in, shoot a shot off, and get out super quick without the enemy team being able to shoot her. So so usually the AWP be on the Jet, but I'm not sure if the AWP is going to be in meta as much as it was, because there was a recent nerf to it, and I don't know exactly what they did, but I know that they put it up from 4,500 to 5,000. So I'm actually not sure what's going to happen with the AWP in meta right now.
Very interesting. Yeah, I wonder if upcoming games you'll see it more or less AWP percentage use, and it'll be interesting to see. So in regards to obviously the first two shots, they're pretty much the most important. And if you whiff those two shots, it's kind of GG. Do you kind of feel like there's an opportunity to, I guess, if you miss those couple of first shots, there's still an opportunity to recover from that?
Yeah, definitely. If you whiff a shot or two, you're pretty much done on the AWP.
Yeah, right. And do you think that in comparison to CSGO, Valorant has, obviously with these dynamic abilities and everything per champion, this allows for more spectator enjoyment in regards to the type of different plays that we can pull off?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's also it's been difficult for me to, because I've talked to a lot of people about this, and I mean it's definitely getting better, but the whole spectator, like if you're watching a tournament, it's not super entertaining right now. But I think a lot of that comes down to like there being no storylines. I think the abilities and stuff do like add like a whole new value to the whole like spectator experience, and like if you know what's going on, it can be really cool to try to think like, oh, what are these guys going to do now, and like because there is a lot of variety you can do with the abilities. But at the moment, like it's just with the abilities, you just sort of, it's almost like an Overwatch team fight. Like you just chuck the abilities and send it into the site instead of like trying to weasel your way in like in CS:GO and like get through all the angles and stuff. Um, but yeah, I think it does make it more entertaining with the abilities. To answer your question.
Yeah, I definitely think, if you compare, say, trying to storm a site or trying to retake a site, for example, in CSGO, you do that with flashes, you do that with mollies, you do
Yeah.
that with nades. But if you do that in Valorant, say, for example, using breach and you chuck a breach ult out onto A, for example, it's a lot more like, okay, they're really committing to this play now.
Mm,
So I think that does, emphasize a little bit more enjoyment from that perspective. But whether that encompasses the whole gameplay and allows for that extra enjoyment is definitely something that's going to be interesting to see how Riot deal with that in the future, I think.
yeah.
Now, touching on the future of esports and gaming as a whole, obviously with COVID and everything hitting, a lot of traditional sports have obviously had to stop. Whereas, online, it's been rampant, it's been growthful. Do you think that, COVID, as unfortunate as it is, has had an impact on the esports industry?
100%. Yep. I think it's been. I think it has been pretty good for esports. I think everyone's at home, so like, what else are you gonna do but play games and like watch games?
Yep.
So I think that's been I think that's been very good for esports. I think they honestly released Valorant at a good time, even though it is very unfortunate with COVID. But I think they played around it very well.
Yeah, right. I definitely think that, having that extra, I guess, outlet at home to, kind of invest more time into, whether it be a new game such as Valorant and being able to learn the new mechanics, um, it allows more people to stay at home, obviously try it out and get better at it. So I think it is interesting to see, well, if, COVID didn't happen and they released Valorant, would it still have the same success as it has? How much COVID has affected it and, how it's dictated its performance, currently.
Yeah.
So, in regards to the future of technology, do you see VR Valorant being a thing? Jumping in and choosing a
Oh.
champion and essentially using your abilities in a VR style.
Oh man.
There's been a couple of like CS:GO kind of rip off VR attempts, but I
Mm.
definitely think that in that kind of Valorant, using your abilities would be something really interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be fun. I don't know if like VR is at that level yet where you could
Hmm.
like do it as like a pro thing, but I reckon it would be fun. Like, it'd be pretty cool to play Valorant VR. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, I definitely think it would add that physical demand,
Mm,
because a lot of us, we kick back. It's a lot more
yeah,
cognitive based at the moment, but, adding that VR element, whether that be in the next 5, 10, 15 years, for example,
yeah.
there's going to be a lot more physical demand for, us to essentially move around and play effectively.
I think that might be a good thing actually, because there are a lot of esports players who they don't get out a lot physically. I mean, I know myself, I've been lacking lately, and that in itself is like you feel a huge like uh depression quality and like your gaming ability and stuff. Like,
Hmm.
it's just you get more fatigued and tired if you're not exercising. So I think if VR does come in, it may actually be like a really good thing for gamers.
Yeah, right. I definitely think that it can have an impact, and whether a lot of people want to go through that VR route, because there's a lot of VRs available at the moment. You got the
Yeah,
Oculus, you got the PSVR, for example, and a lot of people are still like hesitant. Is it something I want, invest into? So I think that when esports goes mainstream down the Valorant route, and a lot of people, spectators, for example, see that VR is something that potentially could be big in the upcoming years. That'll kind of help to dictate its success. So, touching on this whole base of analysis and, rewatching back your games, when you were at Mindfreak or Avant, did you often rewatch back your Paladins games, get in, where you could essentially pinpoint what you could have done, where you went wrong, for example?
yeah, 100%. We did like team on the Avant team. We did it way more than any other Paladins team that I played on.
Okay.
Like, we would watch VODs like pretty much after scrims every time, like the whole team, and then me and my other teammate Corland especially, we'd go back and like watch VODs by ourselves all together, like just all the time. Um, and like me and him would just we would play that game probably like 12 hours a day every day. And then even just ranked games, like we'd watch VODs of like the ranked games, like any streams or anything like that. So yeah, it was VOD intensive, but yeah, VODs are super important. They're so underrated. I don't think people like realize how impactful watching a VOD can be.
Yeah, I definitely
Yeah.
stress the impact of, getting back in that replay viewer. I know for myself personally, when I did it in StarCraft and CSGO, just seeing, where you're at in that position and, what advantages you could have taken, um, in terms of enemy positioning, for example. Was that the same thing you did at the Dire Wolves? Did they also have that kind of strict VOD review process?
No, it wasn't as strict. One thing that really hurt the Dials team was that a lot of the other teams stopped letting us use spectator against them,
Right.
um,
Okay.
which basically just like sort of killed the point of having a coach because like Avril couldn't come in, watch, record the VODs, and then we can go back and watch them. Um, I think that was a big factor into why the team ended up underperforming as well, because we were learning so much from VODs and we were getting so much better. Like we were doing insane in scrims for like a solid 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then all the teams stopped letting us use spec and it just like fell apart from there, really. It was very difficult.
Yeah. What do you know the reasoning behind, not allowing you to do that? Because essentially, if they did it themselves, wouldn't they have the advantage as well?
Yeah, well, that's what we argued. And also, like, one of the guys on the Immortals, that he like coaches the Immortals team, he like watched our VOD
Yep.
versing a top team, not going to name names, and he basically just said like they weren't very good,
Okay.
which was interesting for me to hear because that means that I mean, honestly, my opinion on all the VOD stuff is everyone should be using the spectator slot and having a coach sub in and watch the whole game
Hmm.
on either side of the team, like either teams. They should see both perspectives so that OCE actually has a shot at like being as good as these other regions, so that we like learn a lot from the spectator. But I think what people want is just to be the best in OCE. Like I think that's my theory is just that everyone wants to be the best in OCE, so they just want to like cheese strat their way to the top and not actually win by like having the having all the VODs in and like being the best, like and just knowing what everything like has to happen. So I think people just want to cheese strat. I think that's what it is. They just want to win. I mean,
Yeah.
fair enough. There is money involved, but it's frustrating for me because I have a pretty long perspective on it all, and I think using VODs in OC is very important.
Yeah, right. It's really interesting because when you look at traditional sports, they use replay analysis on the constant.
Yeah,
I was interning at the Melbourne Rebels for a little bit, and just seeing all the players, one on one with the coaches, getting an insight into, where I went wrong, where I could have, passed, for example, just to, as a specificity, and just getting that insight, and then you can use that insight to reflect, in your next game, for example. So I do think that, not allowing that ability to, I guess, look over your past games and, view back your past performances is, as you said, super impactful and kind of, ruins that ability to, I guess, gain performance and perform better.
100%.
So
Yeah.
in regards to in regards to scrims you talked about just briefly, is that sort of the thing that's organized within the team, or is that something you organize by yourself? Maybe like a random random friendly stream scrim, or is it more of a team scrim?
Um, it's usually well. I mean, it depends. If the team has a manager, then the manager will just organize all the scrims for us, and we'll just sort of
Hmm.
tell him who we want to verse and stuff like that. But then if we don't, usually that'll fall on the team captain to organize scrims, and usually we try and get the best teams possible for every scrim. But I mean, sometimes it doesn't work out that way. But ideally, you want to get the best team possible. That's the best practice.
And how do you see the benefit of doing a scrim in comparison to just 5-man queuing into ranked?
Um, oh, that's a good question. Um, well, in ranked, it's a completely different environment because people don't play it as it's not as structured. Like you sort of, it's like solo almost. Like you just sort of like run in there and try like kill everyone
Yep.
to the best of your ability. Whereas scrims against like proper teams, there's a lot of structure to it, and uh, you basically get to verse what you would verse in an official game, and so you like want to practice against that as much as possible compared to like the ranked randomness. So you're more prepared for the official games.
Yeah, right, for sure. I could definitely reflect on that when I used
Mm,
to play COD 4 Pro Mod.
mm,
When I used to, I used to be in a smaller couple of other teams, and we used to, actively try and find scrims, and it's not the same feeling just queuing into like a normal game because it's the same sense that everyone has the same objective. When you're queuing into ranked, you get people that AFK, you get people that troll, you get levers. It's not the same enjoyable experience, and that kind of ruins, your ability to perform in that game essentially. So I do think that having that ability to, find a five men and, play with the same intention of, both performing and increasing your skills really helps you to, I guess, get better at the game.
100%. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned before, and I find this really super interesting because I love like talking about all this. In regards to aim training, you mentioned before that you don't really do aim training. Is that something that you took from your Paladin days? You never really used to do it and kind of just transitioned into Valorant, or is it just something you just don't really find that helpful?
Yeah. I don't know. I've always felt that it's been better to, if you want to get better at aiming at a game, in my opinion, it's like just play the game because then you're going to get the
Hmm.
actual natural aim that you're going to have in the game anyway. But whereas with the aim trainer, it's like it's synthetic, it's not real.
Yep.
Um, and so I think if you want to get comfortable with your mouse, then like using an aim trainer can be actually very beneficial. But when it comes to being good at a game like Valorant, I don't think aim trainers are necessary, in my opinion. So I don't really use them.
Yeah, right. I really like that take. I think it's definitely interesting, and it's definitely something that's really emphasized. In order to get better at the game, you must jump in for half an hour before the game in a competitive, or you jumping on. You got to do 15 minutes of flicking or control, or whatever it may be, warm ups, holding angles. And I know that for myself personally, when I play with my mates, we always kind of jump into like CS:GO Hub, or whether it be surfing to warm up for movement, or retake to get ready for crosshair placement or something, a recall trainer to ensure that recall is feeling good. But I definitely can understand where you're coming from in regards to that is synthetic. It's something that's external, and especially when you're shooting bots that don't mimic human actions. So I do think that there is some point where just play is much better than just doing all this external stuff. So do you also feel the same way about something like reaction control, being able to react, I guess, to different enemies, different situations?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really I think reaction time. I don't know if that can be improved that much. I
Hmm.
think you just sort of have to be lucky and have good reaction time to begin with. I think you could probably increase it by like 10, 20 ms just by like playing a game a lot because you'll see stuff quicker and react to it like faster because you know what's happening. But I don't think that can be improved that much.
Yeah, right. Okay, awesome. And what about spray control? I know that a couple of people, in order to get a feel for the gun, for example, using Vandal or whatever it may be, in CS:GO using an AK, in order to really understand the gun, you're going to go into a custom game or go into arena and hold down your mouse, see what the spray control is like. What do you do for that?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. The spray pattern is one thing that I'll go into custom games for and just sort of like shoot at a wall and try and control it a little bit and like
Yep.
learn like where to pull the mouse down and when. Because you can't really learn that from just shooting at people. You sort of have to like
Hmm.
see it and envision it. So that's actually a good point. And then like the whole tracking thing, I think that just comes down to playing the game and getting used to like. I mean, the spray pattern sort of comes into that as well. So yeah, I think custom game for spray pattern is the most I'll do.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I definitely think that there is an importance of going into custom whatever and just testing around with gun recoil. There's definitely a single individual in my friend group who just jumps into a compet and just absolutely holds left mouse with every gun, but not going to name names. And just touching on reaction speed and reaction time, I've actually been doing an assignment recently, and it's actually really interesting comparing the differences between choice reaction time and simple reaction time.
Hmm.
Simple reaction time just being where there's not more than one decision that has to be made. For example, a picture appearing on the screen at random intervals, and we just have to hit one key as soon as we see that picture. But in choice reaction time, there's multiple stimuli that appear on the screen, and we have to discriminate which button to press. So I think that there is a lot of external research that can go in towards reaction time in FPS games, just because the ability to, I guess, when you see someone's head on the screen, the ability to, I guess, react to that and go for a headshot is something that could definitely be looked at and researched. Now, another thing that obviously impacts this in regards to an FPS genre is, technology and, monitors and frames and FPS. Is that something you've always seen a difference between, for example, between 60 and 144?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I only recently switched to 144 hertz. I was playing on 60 hertz for like the last.
Oh, really?
Oh, it was ridiculous. Yeah. I couldn't believe it when I switched over. I was like, I can't believe I've been playing on 60 FPS my whole esports career. But yeah, I only switched over like maybe 3 months ago, and it is a huge difference. It is like night and day. Like, yeah, I can't go back.
Yep. So they've heard it. Everyone playing on a 60 FPS monitor, throw it in the bin. Get rid of it.
Yeah.
I know that my friend actually bought a 240, one of those 240 FPS monitors, and he just assumed, straight out of the box it would be in 240 FPS. But in fact, he'd be playing it in 60 FPS the whole time.
Yeah, you got to switch it. Oh,
you got to switch it.
Oh, no.
So before, going into one of those big, games, as for example, in Valorant with the Dire Wolves, is there some sort of, mentality going into the game? For example, if you were versing a team that was, dominating on the leaderboards, you'd have that kind of mentality, well, they're a lot stronger. We need to, maybe do a bit more sporadic things, or is it just, sticking with what we know and sticking with what we need to do?
Yeah, it's definitely making sure that you feel prepared going into a game like that as well. But the other thing is, one thing I learned pretty early on to do, like mentally, was just block out whoever we're versing and just see them as characters. Because I think a lot of especially newer competitive players or like younger competitive players, they like see these guys that maybe they even look up to and like watch, and they sort of like feel like they're already going to lose before the game starts. And I think the way to overcome that is just imagine that they're just not even there, you're just playing against characters. Because otherwise you're going to give up too much respect, and that'll turn into map control and losing gunfights and all that stuff. It's definitely a mental game that you have to have within yourself before going up against like a Goliath team like that.
Yeah, I really love that. I spoke with a friend of mine for episode 2 of Mindclickers, Julian, and he talked about, rank, and especially don't look at the other person's belt, because he was a karate athlete. And I really think that looking at the other person's rank can really, really impact just how you feel about the game. And just, as you said, going in with a clean slate and just imagining that we're on the same level, everything's fine, that can really help to, I guess, calm those nerves and calm that anxiety before a game.
Yeah, definitely.
And do you think that going in with that mindset has made you more confident in your ability to perform?
100%, yeah. It's just like, it makes everything more relaxed, and you don't feel like so pressured or like nervous or anything like that. And so I think mindset is super important before a match and during a match as well. And make sure to like, I keep reminding myself that like, yep, we're just playing another game. Just do what we know how to do and get the job done.
Yeah, right. And is that same mindset still there, still active, still strong, even if you're losing by 10 rounds?
I mean, it's harder to keep it there, but I try my hardest to just keep it like that at all times. I mean, you can't win every game, basically, but you can try, and I think that's what's important. But I will say, like, some of the tournaments that they've been running you've been like having to play for upwards of 8 hours a day, and once you get to the 8 hour mark, like you tend to verse like a lot harder teams too, because you're like knocking people out of the tournament if you're going up, and it's just like, it is so mentally draining. It's too long to play for. It really is.
Yeah, I really think that is such a great point. There's, playing for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, there's such a cognitive demand. And when I spoke with Udisoft in episode 1, he just highlighted, playing at Worlds, that such, fatigue, that demand. He said everyone's brains turns to mush just because how fatiguing everything does get progressively. You look at traditional sports and we play for 2 hours, even an hour of some players, even half an hour for some players. But when we look at esports, you're playing a best of 5, you could be playing there for ages. And it's just, there's such a physiological and, I guess demand to be able to sit in your chair and maintain focus for such a long time. And that brings me to my next kind of point. When we look at traditional sports, we have a whole lot of people, I guess, collaborating in the multidisciplinary team of an S&C, a physio, different wide variety of coaches, and more often than not, sometimes a sports psychologist just to help with player demands. When we look at esports, we see, obviously the players, the coach, and, some teams may have a sports psych. Do you think that, having a sports psychologist may become the norm just because of that ability to help deal with cognitive pressure and overcome these different well-being things?
I think that a sports psychologist is arguably as important as a coach. Like
Yep.
if there was the facility to have a sports psychologist at every like top 8 team in the region with like big orgs and stuff, I would like definitely recommend that because it would provide like huge insight to players, and it would definitely help them uh, with like the whole mindset thing and getting like a strong mindset, especially going into stuff like lands that maybe people haven't played before. That can be pretty confronting for new players, and with like
Definitely.
big crowds and stuff. So yeah, I think a sports psychologist like would be super important, and it's definitely something that I think a lot of teams should have.
Yeah, right. And how do you think that kind of fends up against a sports scientist, for example, going in to decide a match, best of five, using heart rate, for example, to, I guess, get an understanding of different spikes in heart rate, understand stress and anxiety like that?
That would be really that'd be really cool. Actually, I've never thought about that, but that could definitely be really interesting. I think they should try to do that at like a big LAN and like test all the players and do that kind of stuff, and then compare that to like a traditional sport and see like what the results are. I feel like that would be super interesting.
Yeah, I know there was one research paper that looked into breath and, holding your breath in clutch situations. Do you think that's something you might do?
I'm more of a clutch player than like a show offy like duelist like wins all the gunfights player. Um, which is one thing I'm very proud of because I'd rather be that clutch player anyway.
Yep.
But yeah, no, definitely like when I'm in a clutch, um, I do very well in the high pressure situations for some reason. It's just I just enjoy it. Um, and so yeah, I definitely hold my breath, and when you have that high pressure, you just immediately enter into the flow state. Like there's just nothing else matters, and you just focus on the screen. Um, so yeah, no, there's definitely that incorporated into clutching and stuff. It'd be interesting to have someone monitor that actually and figure out what's going on in my head.
Yeah, two things I'll draw from that. One being this whole implication of this thing called the drive theory. And what the drive theory tells us is that our best performances take place in high pressure situations. So, for example, in a 1v4 or in a 1v5 clutch, we actually understand what's required of us during these situations. We understand what's at stake and we understand what we need to do to get done. And it actually, kind of aligns with the fact that novices are more likely to make mistakes under these pressure situations. I'm really, it's really cool to see that you thrive under these situations. And that obviously wholeheartedly contributes to you performing really well. And then in regards to that flow state and being able to achieve that optimal flow state, there are some kind of considerations that go into it. And some of them are, for example, that paradox of control. So I'm sure you would have felt that before, that sense of being in complete control without actively trying to be in control. There's that loss of self-consciousness. So, we're aware that we're performing, but there's no critical self-evaluation. Oh, I should have done that. I should have done this. We're just performing, we're rotating, we're shooting without actually thinking about it. There's that complete confidence. So, we're not afraid to push onto a site. We're not afraid to make mistakes and take risks. And that's ultimately optimal for, good performance. And then there's also I'm sure you would have felt it as well, that transformation of time where things might speed up. It feels like, oh, did that round just go past? Whereas actually, everything kind of slows down as well, where everything's kind of feels like we're performing in slow motion. So have you ever felt those kind of feelings before?
Yeah, that's why I love the clutch because you just feel it. Like it's like euphoric almost. Like being in a clutch situation for me is like the ultimate drug. Like it's just the best thing. So yeah, no, there's definitely all of that goes into it. It's a pretty it can be a pretty amazing feeling because like it definitely does like have that whole slow down, speed up thing
Hmm.
um, going on. Like there are a couple of really crazy clutches I got against one of the Korean pro teams, and it was like a 1v5 on a 4 buy round, and I somehow managed to like pull it off, and that was just
Yeah, I
like,
saw that. That was a good
yeah,
one.
oh yeah, you did, yeah.
Yeah.
That was like the craziest, like, and I was just so zoned into what was happening. It was like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's euphoric. It really is.
Yeah, right. And do you think that, winning that 1v5 clutch, going into the next round, does that kind of translate? You feel that euphoric feeling, I'm unstoppable, I can do whatever I want. And then in retrospect, if you lose that 1v5 round, is it more about, okay, understanding I got a couple of picks, I killed their AWPer, they don't have an AWP next round, they're eco, whatever it may be. I did the best. I'm not going to trash talk myself.
Yeah, 100%. The best thing that I've found to do like in those situations that helps me the most is like just take the positives out of what you did that round. Like even if it's nothing, like yeah, you kill one guy, it's good damage. You damage their economy, so you just like have to feel good about that. Um, and then also like if you do win a pretty nuts clutch like that, it's also about like sort of bringing yourself back down and not getting
Hmm.
overconfident in that situation
Yep.
for the next round as well. So you really have to like maintain a balance throughout the whole thing. It can be pretty difficult at times though.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I definitely think that there's such an importance in going into the next round and establishing that, like you said, that balance, that equilibrium. I know that, personally, when I play with a few of my mates, they pop off for one round, they pop off with a 2, 3, 4, 5 frag, whatever it may be, a nice clutch or something, and they go into the next round and they're like, watch me do it again. And that's where they crash. They get overconfident, they get over aroused, and they feel like they can do it again. But that's where actually performance, as we look on that thing, performance can often decrease when we're over aroused. So that's where they kind of crash. Now, we have two different types of anxiety. There's somatic anxiety, and that's where, we get kind of sweaty palms. Now, I don't want to talk about the fact that my keyboard's drenched after a competitive game, or my mouse is absolutely feels like it's about to malfunction. It's that dripping wet with sweat, which is not the best thing, of course. But is that something you kind of go through?
Um, Not particularly, no. I mean I honestly in real life scenarios, like I do battle with a lot of anxiety. But
Hmm.
the one thing I've noticed for gaming is that it all goes away. Like I just don't feel like any levels of anxiety, and I don't know what it is. Like I think it's just I just love like doing what I do, so there's like no anxiety around it. Like I'm confident in my abilities. Um, Although I will say, some tournaments for Valorant recently, going into them, like you feel like this like heart rate increase, and you start like getting really nervous, and so
Yep.
I try like do like breathing exercise to bring that down and like slow the heart
Hmm.
rate and just like get ready for the game.
Yeah, love it. That's what I like to call auditory poetry. Just something that really makes sense and really aligns with what you're passionate about. And as you said, you go into the game and that anxiety goes away, and that's really awesome. And having that ability to understand your stress, and also have the ability to understand that you can incorporate these positive self statements that can ultimately decrease your anxiety and stress in whatever situation it may be. Now, in regards to team dynamic and team culture, how important do you think communication is with the guys? Being able to communicate in game effectively and both efficiently.
Um, I would say super important. It's a difficult thing though because you really have to mesh well with your team to get like 100% clear and good comms. And the other thing that I've noticed is like even if you're having like a little bit of fun with it as well, like in between rounds and just like have a bit of banter and stuff, that can
Mhm.
actually really help with like gameplay as well. Like you're just sort of
Definitely.
in like a good mood, and you feel more relaxed if you're like laughing and stuff like that. So I think it's always good to have like a bit of a jokester on your team, have someone who can crack a joke in between rounds, but then also like get back to seriousness when you do start engaging in that round. But I think it's definitely important mid round to have very like clear, decisive comms, um, and it's also good to have like the voice of reason with an IGL as well. I've noticed that that's super beneficial because I've been on teams that don't have them and they do,
Yep.
and especially if it's an older guy, like it can be the difference between like having a top 16 team and a top 8 team.
Yeah, I really think that's really interesting. I definitely think an in-game leader, an IGL, really does bring that voice and maturity, and can help ultimately, add to the foundation of a team. Just to help, as you said, with decisiveness and ensuring that everything is going how it should be. I can definitely know that within our little squad that we play with, there's definitely one individual. He'll know who he is when he's listening to it, if he does listen to it, who just absolutely calls the most randomest stuff. Sees one little nade A or something, they're going A, rush A, whatever it may be, completely wrong, completely overreacting. So I definitely think there is an importance to have that decisiveness, effective, efficient communication. So when we look at the OCE League and Ocean as a whole, I definitely think there is a little bit of disadvantage in comparison to the big NA and EU Titans. What do you think OCE needs to do, to be able to be an active contender for the title against these big domineering, I guess, Titans?
Oh man, I think it's a really good question. I've been like on Twitter trying to get have this discussion with people so often. I think that specifically in Valorant, I think we need to be like using all the stuff we have at our disposal to keep up with those teams, and like the spectator slot being one of them. And then also, I think it's hard because we don't have all the viewership, so we can't get all the financial backing down here either, which is always like a big negative in OC. But I think if orgs can get the teams over to NA and EU and even boot camp like once or twice a year, that would like make a huge difference, because
Mm-hmm.
there's no shortage of extremely talented players in OC. Like there are a few players down here who could easily play on the top teams over there.
Yep.
But it's just unfortunate because they can't really get over there, especially not right now. Um, so I think getting over there and playing against those teams as much as possible, and then bringing that back to OC so everyone else can like
Mm-hmm.
play against it, I think is probably the best way.
Yeah, right. I definitely think that OCE has that potential. As you said, there are a lot of players who have that potential and that ability to, be a rival on the international scene. And there are some that have gone ahead and done that. Whether that be in some other games. I know specifically CS:GO. There's been a few, and League of Legends. And we look to in recent times, obviously Legacy forming at the Worlds. Being a quite a good rival contender in that international stage, and I guess just showing that OCE has potential to, I guess, come ahead and show that we are some people to we are a force to be reckoned with, and it might take us a few more years to establish that foundation and what we need to do to compete at that high scene. But I think there is a potential, especially as you said, when you look at once we get a few more stakeholders or sponsorships, a bit more seriousness towards the OCE scene. I think that's definitely where we'll start to perform and have that backing to be able to take us and compete on that international scene.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, a great example of that back in Paladins, the team that was dominant throughout pretty much the whole of Oceanic Paladins, which was Kangol. Actually, I mean, a couple of the players is playing Valorant now, like Diggy Dog and Chronix and Oz Rhino. They're all on Valorant now. But that team in like 2017, they were like third in the world. Like they were like doing really well at all the world championship events.
Yep.
And like they were over there pretty frequently because of that. And so like that's an example right there. Like OC, it's not that we have bad players, it's just that we have like bad luck, basically bad situation. Just can't get over there enough and scrim these like teams that have all these resources to work with. It's unfortunate, really, but
Yeah. I think that, some might say that we are the underdogs in that worldwide stage, but I definitely think being the underdogs has that, advantage towards ourselves, because when we do come out and we do shine, it highlights how well that, we are. And, I think that, NA and EU have that big advantage in that funding and that resource availability, as you said. So I think that it's just a matter of years where we'll start to see OCE perform consistently and effectively on that international scene. So I definitely think that's something really interesting and something I look forward to seeing as well.
definitely, yeah.
So in regards to building yourself as an individual and essentially building your brand, We look to traditional sports and we see so many athletes, outside of their sport developing themselves, building their brand, building awareness. How important do you think that is for esports players to do?
I think that I'm of the opinion that esports isn't about the team; it's about the player, or
Hmm.
even really the game. Like it's about the player, and like the brand around that player. Like Ninja, for example. Um, I mean, he's a really good example. He's done very well in that whole regard. But I think players should definitely be looking to build their personal brand as much as possible, especially in OC. I've been talking to a few players about it actually, and trying to get them to like push some content and stuff. Because I mean, that in itself is going to bring more viewers in if they do it well, to like the whole scene. And I mean, it's only up from there really. So I think it's the most important thing.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think that it is very important to, I guess, market yourself. And as you said, it's all about the individual, not the team. You look at the big guys, Ninja Shroud, whoever they may be, they all have a unique ability to market themselves in such a niche area that they stand out from the crowd, essentially. And, whether that be, you posting on YouTube, weekly videos, or posting on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, creating a profile on LinkedIn to get some kind of professional development connections on there. It's definitely an opportunity for some athletes to look at. But I definitely think that there is development. Athletes are becoming aware that they need to obviously cater for themselves and market themselves, and ultimately create their identity in this kind of scene. Now, just kind of briefly touching on those kind of developing teams, ones that haven't really entered the competitive scene have more so been on the ranked, maybe setting up a few scrims in here and there, but more so playing recreationally as casually and are looking to transform into that competitive league. What kind of information and tips would you give these guys?
Um, Watch
Is it?
VODs of like top teams in
Mhm.
uh, like any G2 VOD's really interesting to watch. Um, TSM's a good one to watch as well, like the way that they play the characters off and their teamwork and stuff. Just watch VODs really and just learn, like see why people are doing things, and like what triggers them to do that or what info they have, and really try like widen the view of like Valorant as a game and like be creative with it. Because the more innovative you are, the more likely you are to be better than everyone else. So
Yep.
yeah.
Do you think that Twitch streaming and streaming as a whole on YouTube or whatever it may be, D Live for example, do you think that has an impact on your ability to get out there and get known by teams, organizations, people searching for people to up and come and sponsor, for example?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think a lot of the guys who are being seen as like the top players right now, everyone's got eyes on them and they're always Twitch. Like everyone's watching them on Twitch, and so I think that's been like very beneficial to their personal brands. Um, so I think yeah, a Twitch stream is definitely something that people should look to do if they're trying to build their personal brand, or be more well known in the region. Really.
Yeah, I think streaming as a whole can definitely help to influence how people can look at you. Um, and it can also create a representation of your character outside of the game as well. So I think it is very important. And I think the most important thing is to remember is that when you start off, you're only going to have a couple of viewers. You might just have your friends. You might just have you. Like I know when I was streaming Tekken, for example, I just had myself for literally a good solid couple of weeks until I started to get into the tens of viewers. Pretty big, I know. But I definitely think its persistence is key here in regards to streaming, and just understanding that there's a process. Everyone's going to go through that process. Not everyone got a million viewers in one day, essentially. So we're going to wrap it up now with going through a couple of Valorant specific scenarios, just get an idea of what you would do in these kind of scenarios so that listeners can kind of use these kind of things and just get an understanding of why you do what you do. So say we're hovering around say you're hovering around B on split and they just planted A in a 1v3 situation. What would be the thought process?
So first, I would ask my teammates where everyone was last seen,
Hmm.
so I can figure out a general area of where they can be given the time like that's been elapsed, and then figure out like the best path to take to the A site. Then, and then once you get around the A site, it's basically just a matter of it is definitely a bit of luck involved in clutching, I will say, but it's a matter of uh, making the luck into, well, making it into skill basically, and just like figuring out where I can go to force 1v1s. Because if you can take 3 different 1v1s in a 1v3, you've pretty much got a 60-70% chance of winning that clutch if you're like a really good player.
Right.
So yeah, it's about forcing the 1v1s and not trying to take 1v2s or 1v3s in a clutch situation like that.
Gotcha, right. And how about whether when you're deciding whether you're going to clutch or whether you're going to save on an important round?
It depends on how much economy you have, really. Like,
Mhm.
if you lose 2 players on like A side on the split, for example, and you have really low economy, and there's 5 players up in the enemy team, like you can even just save off that. It'd be worth it to do that because you could probably buy the 2 teammates who died the next round and still have a force buy.
Yep.
So yeah, that's sort of the saving mindset.
Right. And does that same mindset apply to the same scenario in a 1v2 versus a 1v5?
Yeah, yeah, I would say so. If you got low economy and they've got high economy, you definitely want to save and get out of that. You don't really want to take it.
Right. Okay. And in regards to say an eco round where you just buy pistols only, is that more of an incentive to play a lot more aggressive? For example, in CS:GO, it's quite noticeable that we rush a B if we're doing an eco push, and we just try and get as many picks as we can possibly, and play a lot more aggressive. Is that the same thing in Valorant?
Yeah, 100%. Basically, with the eco rounds, what you're trying to do is um, force out duels real early with like a lot of people in your team and get like a pick or two. And then once you do that, you get their guns. And that's how you win an eco round, basically. You just want to force the duels, win one, take the gun, and then hopefully work around that and win the round.
Right. And how often would you do a strategy, for example, getting one standalone player to go make a ton of noise around A, but then actually going B and, trying to bait out that, actually we are going to go A, but then in turn, actually just stacking on B?
Yeah, pretty frequently, especially on buy rounds. That's definitely a thing because you can sort of default better because everyone has like longer ranges and stuff,
Hmm.
and more utility. So usually like the cipher will do that. So I'll like go around, bait a little bit on A, like chuck some cages and like make a bit of noise, and then my team will either be working up mid or B, and then from there, once they execute, I go back and then try and lurk from mid to get a flank around on the guys trying to retake.
Yeah, right. Awesome. And finally, in regards to maps and map efficiency and map control and all that kind of stuff, when we look at Haven, there's 3 bomb sites. All the rest have 2 bomb sites, an A and a B, but Haven has 3 bomb sites. So, how do you think having an A, B, and C bomb opens up for more possibilities for different kinds of play?
It definitely added um a different aspect to the game, and like more stuff you could do with it to win rounds on attack. Because attack is definitely hard on in Valorant. It's not easy,
Yep.
or because of the map, like the way the maps are designed. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't really know if they needed 3 sites on that map. Like, if they just took B out and just made it like a true mid, because there are a lot of maps
Hmm.
that don't have a true mid, which is also
Yep.
like an issue. Um, that would be interesting as well. But it was definitely an aspect changer. I'll say that much.
Yeah, right. And that's really interesting. I do think that the aspect of having a true mid, because you're actually reflecting on now, some apps really don't have a true mid, but you look to CSGO, for example, and a lot of them do. So that's something that's actually really interesting. And I guess can be looked at from a game perspective, like different dynamic scenarios that can be incorporated around the bomb sites and everything. But when we compare to CS:GO, their map pool is a lot wider and not broader. Obviously, that's due to having previously Counter Strike Source and CS 1.6 that they can incorporate some of those maps into. But do you think that Valorant really needs to enhance their map pool as well before things start to become a little bit stale?
100. I hope they do. I think at the moment, it's getting a little bit stale. Like it's just the same 4 maps over and over again. I think there definitely needs to be more maps and better maps at that much. To be honest, the maps aren't that fun to play at the moment. Ascent's pretty good actually. I think they designed that very well, but the other ones like Split is a no. Haven's a little bit iffy too. Yeah.
And just kind of wrapping up now, I guess just quickly touching on, this whole idea of internet toxicity and how that can kind of impact on a player's performance. Like, obviously down in gold and platinum, there's quite a little bit of toxicity. Is that the same thing up in Immortal leagues and around that area?
Yeah, just like cyberbullying and stuff like that.
Yeah, just like purposely trolling, going FK, whatever they may be.
Yeah. Oh man, I mean, look, I'm pretty sick of all that stuff. It's harder on the newer players who aren't used to it. Especially when you're in the spotlight, like playing on all the streams and stuff. You're always going to get shit talked basically.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, there are players in Valorant right now in OCE who've like built their reputation off being toxic.
Yeah, gotcha.
And it just sucks. Like they ruin all the ranked queues. Whenever you're playing, like they're just toxic, completely ruins the game. You're more likely to lose because you're just being yelled at. You don't want to like get yelled at about it, so you just don't make plays that you usually would, and it screws up everything basically. Yeah, it needs to be fixed. It's a problem.
Yeah, definitely. I think that when I started out, coming from that CS:GO background, queuing out with 3 or 4 or whatever it was we did in Valorant, we had that mechanical aim, we had that kind of mechanical game sense of an FPS genre, but often, when we played a 3-man, we'd queue with 2 randoms, and sometimes one of the randoms would be a bit toxic. Sometimes we'd get someone who, we thought, just because, they didn't really have that game sense, they didn't have the aiming ability. Well, obviously, maybe they might have come from League just because it is a riot-based game. So I think there is an incentive to welcome those new players. There is an opportunity for bants and stuff, but maybe not so much that it actually impacts their performance. Because as you said, you don't want to stop people from trying to go for the plays they want to do, going for a clutch or whatever, and that just ruins the kind of spirit of the game. So I think that, it can be addressed, it can't be addressed. It's one of those iffy topics that it's definitely interesting to talk about.
Yeah, definitely.
Alrighty, I think that is fantastic for today, mate. So just for everyone listening, where can we find you on your socials?
Just at Wryce on Twitter with 2 E's, and then YouTube and Twitch is just Wryce.
Perfect. And do we expect to see some absolute Apex content coming out of you soon?
100%. I'm starting to get on the YouTube grind, so there'll be some cool stuff coming there.
Perfect. Look forward to all the content coming out soon, mate. Well, I guess that wraps up with everything. Thank you very much for obviously taking the time out of your day to chat with me. We've gone for about an hour now, so it's one of the lengthy episodes, but definitely got an insight into Valorant and the FPS genre and different, physiological and psychological demands of Valorant and Paladins as well.
No worries. It's always a pleasure.
Perfect. Thank you very much for everyone who has managed to reach this time. If you listen to this now, we're just over an hour, so it is our longest episode, but I hope you got quite a few insightful tips into Valorant and the FPS genre from Wryce here. Please stay tuned on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for some upcoming new episodes. This episode will be going out quite soon, so I look forward to everyone's reactions and hearing about it, especially from a professional gameplay perspective standpoint. Thank you very much. This has been your host, your boy Huge Lachlan, and I will see you in episode 5.